is one of the bases of chemistry and how we delineate molecules, and yet it's that little.
Well, when you go back to
really
when you go back to what it does for plants, and I don't even think I put in, I've talked about it a bunch of times. I don't even. Oh, it is in there, but it was funny because when I was reading about it, they're like, yeah, when you dry a plant down to like just dry as a bone,
right?
It's 45% carbon. You know what I mean? So like, again,
so you're telling me it's basically a diamond?
Yeah. Well,
that's
you know,
what I
you
mean.
keep well.
With a podcast you need your feed, teaching the game like you never seen. Jared, Gabe, Rambo, true OGs, masters of the globe, set your mind free. From Denver, Colorado, where the data's green, we set the data points for the SOPs. Jug Dealers Podcast, yes indeed.
Hey, welcome back to the Jug Dealers Podcast. All things cannabis and lifestyle related, brought to you by the good people at 5-8. And now we have the JugDealers.net going.
JugDealers.net.
So for all your needs, if you want merch, if you want product, if you're in a place where you can't get it, JugDealers.net is the place to go.
We're also going to be doing, a lot of giveaways and stuff through there, both with merchandise, new products, maybe even beta testing through there.
Yeah, I was going to say sample testing.
So we're gonna have a whole link that's on there that Crambo's got, and once everything's finalized, we'll let you know exactly where it's at on the webpage.
Yep.
But definitely, I think that's going to be kind of our conduit to keep our listeners all hooked up. Also, as normal, kind of an open shout out to anybody that is in a commercial cultivation that either wants to test product at home or test it in their commercial facility, especially if they have any kind of testing program, testing room, things like that. Shoot us a message.
We love R&D rooms.
We do.
We'll go up against whatever you got, man.
So shoot us a message. We'll get you hooked up. Jug Dealers on Instagram. Today we are officially finishing up
the elements.
The elements,
This is the free elements. This is the ones that aren't minerals. This is the ones that aren't mined.
Correct. These are not mined. These are not given to plants. These are free elements.
They're just out there.
They're just out there, grabbed from the environment around them.
Yep.
It's oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon. And the reason we felt like it was so important to talk about them is you can't really talk about photosynthesis without them.
You cannot. And so to start the show, we figured we would. First off, we're going to discuss these two things, where they come from in the environment, what they do for the plants. But realistically, to kind of cover that, we really need to talk about photosynthesis.
Yeah, and what it is, and kind of definition-wise, and what's actually going on. And why don't you take it away, Gabe?
So photosynthesis is the process in which plants convert light energy into chemical energy. The chemical energy is stored in the form of sugars, which are created from water and carbon dioxide. So that's why we say these are the free elements, because ultimately carbon dioxide comes from the environment. Now, that being said, most of us are supplementing, so it's not necessarily that free.
Well, and I guess,
but it's in the environment. If you're talking in the real world, it's out.
Well, and the way I also look at free is maybe not even free in the case of like actual like monetarily free, but I look at it as like freely available in the environment, running around, something you don't have to mine.
Dude,
I think that's like the biggest.
I got a friend who
synthesized.
I got a friend who was growing out in containers out in the forest, and the ambient CO2 was 1,200 parts per million. And I called him up. I'm like, bro, get a different meter. Something's got to be wrong.
Something's got to be wrong.
And he checked it, and he checked it a bunch of spots, but I guess the forest was just so lush.
Well, people don't understand that there is two sides of that chemical equation, right? Because they all have to be balanced for it to be a real chemical equation, right? So photosynthesis is one end, respiration is on the other end. And they do use a flip-flop, right? So, photosynthesis, you're taking in CO2 and as a byproduct getting off O2, which we'll get into a little bit as well. But on the flip side of that, you actually have, the roots are taking in O2 and giving off CO2.
People don't account for that part. Again, that's one of those things where this facility that I actually just designed, we went and put in one of those oxygenation systems because it oxygenates the water, which adds oxygen to the root zone.
Sure.
And a lot of people don't know this, but it actually decreases your necessity for nutrients in there as well.
Yeah, because it's going to maximize uptake and whatnot. It really makes the water, for lack of a better term, be very alive and very active. Okay,
so energy is basically required to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen,
and that energy is of course coming from the sun, from light energy. Not always, but in photosynthesis specifically, which we're going to talk about autotrophs a little bit more specifically. But in the case of photosynthesis, that is true.
Grandma, can you slide that up just a touch? Thank you, dude. this occurs in the step of photosynthetic reaction where carbon dioxide combines with the water. So again,
Yes.
like Jaron always likes to say, there's all this stuff happening in there where the plant's doing all these things on its own,
Which is really what makes them amazing, and honestly, and I'm going to get into that real quick here about amazing. But in the second stage of reactions, hydrogen is acquired where the plant releases oxygen as a byproduct. That's what we always hear about plants. Oh, plants give off oxygen, which is absolutely very true. But again, there is a balance to that equation as well.
They're using some as well.
And last, certainly not least, the hydrogen in the second stage combines with carbon dioxide for the formulation of the sugar glucose, which that's the money. That's really what we're looking for, right? So at the end of the day, the product of photosynthesis is what is it? H12O6 or H12O6 C12, something like that. I should have looked that up before. But anyway, it is just
dude. It's a lot to know. It's a lot.
It's a funny
to know.
one out the top.
That's why
of the
we
head.
keep notes, dude. That's why we keep notes.
C6H12O6. There it is. C6H12O6. I knew it would come to me. But anyway, that's the ultimate product of photosynthesis. Is we're trying to, or the plant is trying to. Make energy, usable energy that it can then store and use at a later time. And that's what really brings me into truly what I believe. There's many, many reasons, but one of the reasons that I truly believe plants are so amazing is because they're an autotroph. And I've talked about that a number of times on the show, but I haven't really ever gone into any detail.
Now's the time.
Now is the time. Here we are.
That's why we're here.
To be clear, if you think about auto, right, autotroph, auto food, right? So again, a lot of these things are Latin-based, so typically you can kind of get a little bit of a hint of what's going on. Us being heterotrophs as people, meaning we have to go seek out, our own food. We can't make it ourselves, and that's one of the reasons we have to be mobile, right? So when you think about plants and them being immobile, one of the reasons and really truly the reason they're able to do is because they're an autotroph. So what is an autotroph? It's an organism that produces complex organic compounds such as carbohydrates, fats, and proteins using carbon from simple substances such as carbon dioxide, generally using energy from light, i.e. photosynthesis. They convert an abiotic source of energy, example light, into energy stored in organic compounds which can be used by other organisms, for an example, heterotrophs. So we eat plants, right? They're creating that food. We're able to actually consume that food and then use it for our own energy stores, which again is really interesting because if you think about it, it's a complete building block. But there's also little things like algae and protozoa and things like that. So I want to, at least mention that so you don't think that just plants are the only autotrophs. There are some other things, but if you think about it, even the first, in theory, and I didn't put too much of this in there because I didn't want to get too deep, but in theory, the first plants and the first terrestrial things had to be autotrophs because that's the base of the food chain, right? Yep. Something has to be sitting there creating food. Then later on, something can come and consume that and use that food. And then later on, something can come and consume that has consumed the plant, And again, I will have... and I've got that Grambo up on the file, but we do have a nice chart that'll kind of show some of this stuff going on as well.
That is a nice, look at that. That is a nice chart.
Right? So again, it does plants, algae, many bacteria. Again, these things are all autotrophs. Kind of shows what's going on there. Talks about, again, people think fungi is a plant. Really, it's a decomposer. So much like us, it's a heterotroph, not an autotroph. Anyway, so, we like to have some nice visual things to show people as well. And this is obviously pretty basic, but I also thought it was rather to the point. Good old Wikipedia.
I like the praying mantis and the mushrooms and
I'll be honest,
the girl from the Blind Faith album.
It was the Amanita mushroom.
I'm trying to figure out why this chick has a mushroom rack.
Look, I don't know why I was drawn to it. Okay. Anyway.
That's a good graphic, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. Back to the show. Okay. So, of course, last but not least, put that up just a little bit, Grambo. No, other way. Autotrophs do not need a living source of carbon or energy, as we're mentioning, and are the producers in a food chain. So autotrophs a lot of times are known as producers. Sometimes that'll be interchanged just as far as wording goes. Again, producers in the food chain, such as plants on land or algae in the water, in contrast to heterotrophs as consumers of autotrophs or other heterotrophs. Obviously, we're either eating plants or we're eating other animals, basically. It's kind of how that works. Autotrophs can reduce carbon dioxide to make organic compounds for biosynthesis and as stored chemical fuel. That is what an autotroph is, and I think at the baseline, that to me is truly why plants are so amazing, among many, many, many other things. But, that's kind of, for me, was what was most when I really started delving into the plant world and things, it was one of the first things that struck me as like, man, like this is what makes them special.
I mean, like we say, dude, they don't need us. The only and the reason they need us in these commercial environments, when we're talking about commercial cannabis, is because we've removed the soil.
All the other stuff.
Yeah, we were growing them in inert media.
Yeah.
So,
we've removed all the checks
even though
and
that's only 5% of the plant, because we're
Right.
about to talk about the fact that both hydrogen and carbon are 90% of the plant. So
Right.
each one of those is 45%. So, as we've kind of progressed through all these episodes, all those elements that we talked about in every episode up until then, now it's only been 5% of the plant,
which is strange to think about,
crazy.
right? Yeah,
it's
and
crazy.
You think about like all the structural things and all the things we talk about that people know about. Oh, it takes in CO2 and it puts out O2. Like all these are the free elements. It's not even the quote unquote 17 plant essential, right? So this has been a fun journey. It has been, and we hope that through all this, people have learned something. I know we've learned. I've definitely learned something.
But then beyond that, the future episodes that we have, where we have some guests that are talking some really high level stuff, they can go back to the episodes before and go, oh, okay, this helps me relate.
Well, that's
to
one of the
that,
nice things when having even, which I think of like, having a library, which I have, I legitimately still like having books. I still like having, Jeff's
books are great
trilogy around, and it's something where it's like, you don't have to know everything in that book. You just have to know the information's in there.
You got to know where to find it.
But you got to know who it was. I believe was it Ben Franklin or somebody smart was like, well, you don't have to know everything. You just need to know where to find it.
Well, I mean, it's funny because our book later that we talk about.
And correct me if it wasn't Ben Franklin, it was somebody smart.
I'm not going to tell everybody what the book is, but our book that we talk about later, one of the big things they tell you in the book is surround yourself with people who are really good at their position. Your job as a leader is to put them in the right position. Don't make a guy who's supposed to be a running back, a wide receiver.
Don't put a square peg in a circle hole.
Yeah, and it's your job as a leader to identify the people and where they need to be and let them flourish.
And I've always said, for that, aces in their places. You know what I mean? Really take advantage of people's strengths. Okay, on that note,
let's jam on hydrogen.
Hydrogen coming at you.
H in the periodic table, atomic number of 1. It is the lightest of all the elements. It is the most abundant.
Being that it's number 1. Just throwing that out there.
Number 1, numero uno. It is most abundant chemical substance in the universe, which is pretty wild. It exists as a gas. It's non-toxic, but highly combustible. It's always funny because
think Hindenburg.
Yeah, and that's the thing I always tell people.
I mean, not laughing.
Think Hindenburg again with that anhydrous ammonia. The
Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Yep.
Things, they all have hydrogen. Stars like the sun are mostly hydrogen.
Well, that thing burns like a mother.
So that pretty much says it right there. Ooh. It exists on Earth in molecular forms such as water and organic compounds. So again, we talk about H2O.
Yep.
So stuff like that. That's one of the things where like, hey, we're not. Again, when we talk about free elements, we're not mining. It just exists. If you water plants, you're giving them hydrogen.
Come and get it.
It makes up 45% of the plants necessary for building sugars.
And this is what it's doing for the plant specifically, because we do want to try and always hit, as we've done with all the other elements. So what is it we got? Now, what does it do? Exactly like you say, it is 45% of the plant necessary for building sugars and other molecules to produce glucose, as we mentioned earlier, for plant energy.
Hydrogen ions are vital in both aiding proton gradient to help drive the electron transport chain in photosynthesis and for plant respiration.
Man, it's been a while since I've really the whole electron that's again one of those ones
super important.
Super important, but incredibly complex.
Just like potassium. Things that help move things around the plant are just as important as things that build structure.
Well, and even these gradients that are created, or even things like osmosis and the way that water on one side of a permeable membrane and how that operates is like so many of these things, or even the polarity of water. It's like this is what really makes it all happen, and it's very complex stuff again that we know very little about. We usually know kind of the beginning and the end, but very little in the middle. And just down a little bit there, Josh.
I was going to say, additionally, it can exist as an element, as a compound.
And that means
H1, H2.
H1 or H2. Right.
Where do plants get it? We always like to talk about where plants source things. Basically, water, and you can supplement sometimes with peroxide. I know a lot of people. I used to, in my facilities, having had Zach on the episode, H2O2, you can do very small injections of that.
and that's going to pop off oxygen molecules is what's going to happen. So,
But
again, that's not what you're going to necessarily see in nature in general. Straight up, it's just from water.
It's just from water.
But again, we do like to mention that because we are talking about indoor horticulture, primarily on the show and cannabis production, et cetera. So
seems like that who the listeners are.
Well,
I don't know
I
because
think it's everybody. I hope it's everybody. I don't know.
But you figure that most of our listeners have probably grown dope. We've said that before, and you mock me.
Well, right. That's true. I
would say it's a good part of.
But I mean, I would hold on though.
Hey,
it's interesting though because you tell us a lot.
All you philodendron growers out there, I still love you.
Around the world.
Yeah.
So
the orchid growers, I still love you.
It's that prohibition land thing, Whenever I see 5% in England, I go anywhere we're big. I just assume it's illegal.
Dude, that's awesome.
It's Cuban tomatoes. Delicious.
That's right. Tomatoes.
Delicious.
Yes.
Okay. So on to oxygen.
Do you want to take us away?
Yeah, I can take oxygen away. Fairly obvious O on the periodic table, atomic number of 8, so it's obviously pretty light as well, not quite as light as hydrogen. It is the most abundant element in the Earth's crust specifically, after hydrogen and helium, which I found hydrogen didn't surprise me, helium did.
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of helium around.
I guess there's at standard temperature and pressure, 2 atoms combine to make dioxygen or O2. That's what we know. Again, standard atmospheric pressure. That means basically what we're living in. Makes up just over 20%, almost 21% of the Earth's atmosphere.
So you got the 78% nitrogen. You got the 20%. And then there's this 1.5%
There's
in there
just
that's
a little
doing
bit
some weird things.
Yeah, doing some other stuff. Makes up almost half the Earth's crust and oxides, and constantly is replenished in the atmosphere through photosynthetic action from living organisms. And
so it's in that chain.
And that's why a terrarium can work, folks, right? Because of just what I was saying before. And I know, and Graham was shaking his head.
Well, because I was thinking, I was just, we took some dabs before the show, and I was literally racking my brain going, how can oxygen be in the Earth's crust, man? And you're like, oxides. Like, oh, Jesus.
Oh, poo.
I'm firing myself.
Well, it's funny. I think a lot of people don't think when they look at certain words and it has like a HOL on the end of it or an IDE on the end of it that it means
these are conventions.
Yeah.
These are language conventions that have been established in things like chemistry.
HOL means there's probably alcohol in it, or
I mean that's a thing.
IDE.
Like ASE means it's an enzyme. You know what I mean? Things. It's like whatever. It's tomato, folks.
Sometimes you forget about the basics.
But that's what we're here for.
So what does it do for plants, Jayhawk?
Okay, I guess that's really, at the end of the day, that's what's most important. So what does oxygen do? Most oxygen is expelled as a byproduct, right? So that's what we love about it, being that we are O2 breathers. And again, that's why
we got to replenish trees and stuff.
Exactly. And that's why you talk about,
the lungs of the planet.
Carbon sinks being like large jungles like the Amazon and things like that. So, they sequester carbon and put it in the soil because there's the plant gets 0 carbon from soil. It gets it only from the air, and we'll touch on that in a moment. But very small part is used for respiration. Again, like we said, so it is more on the other end, but you can't discount respiration in the sense that saying, it's not taking in any O2. It's just the balance is higher on the photosynthesis side as opposed to the respiration side.
And they absorb it from the air more so during the breakdown of CO2.
Well, and also understand that that's one of the reasons why, when you flood your plant roots, that's why it's a problem, because they need to be breathing. So even things like these dry downs, if you think about it, right, as it's going down, it's literally pulling air down into the substrate, which is what you need. That's why proper dry downs actually create, these vigorous root systems and create, that real desire to then actually, because really it's the top 20% of your roots, once everything's said and done in a pot, that's actually feeding and eating, and where the maximum amount of the root hairs are. And really it's root hairs, which things like rhizium, which focus, you like that? Which focus on the rhizosheath production, which focus on the rhizosheath, which is right where the soil is connecting.
Well, and we're going to get into that, because we feel like that's so important as far as
that's
the root
that's where
zone.
your surface area is. That's where the root uptake is. It's in the root hairs. It's in that surface area. It's in the very, very fine parts of the root that are actually attaching to the soil particles.
That's why we don't want to bleach it.
Well, I mean, anyway.
It's just an opinion.
Yeah, I mean, these are just like opinions here, man. Okay, plants do not absorb.
Next one. O interacts with nitrogen in a process called denitrification.
Denitrification, yeah. Affects other elements, oxidation as well. So, you can have, free radicals and oxygen floating around. That definitely does break things down. It can be problematic at times. Only leaves and stems of plants acquire oxygen through photosynthesis. Roots take in oxygen from the environment through air spaces in the soil, as I was just
and that's why you don't want to drown the things.
Right. And, one thing I do like to mention is plants don't take in oxygen directly from the air.
Yeah.
They get it as CO2 and then actually break it down. They use the energy from light to break that down. Slam it together.
That's why we talked about the photosynthesis.
C6H12O6. Hey. Okay. Where do plants get it? I think you guys pretty much got it at this point. CO2, H2O, H2O2 in these indoor environments, and then O2 generators also in these indoor environments. You don't see that elsewhere. Okay. Last but certainly not least,
we like to give people the pro tips for the indoor gardens, dude.
We think that might be our listenership. I don't know.
I think so.
You know what? It's Grambo's job.
Indoor tomatoes.
I always say people listen because they want to be better growers, and you guys are scientists. And
whoa.
You guys are like weeds.
Bro, sharing some
I don't know. There's no word for it.
We're just a couple of guys, a couple of jug dealers.
Carbon, dude. It's C on the periodic table. It's an atomic number of 6, although widely distributed in nature, not especially abundant at 0.025 of the Earth's crust. That actually kind of surprised me.
That surprised me as well. I read that and I was like,
whoa.
I'm thinking it's like 30% or something. You know what I mean?
Oddly, it forms more compounds than all of the other elements combined, which again,
but
you wouldn't think by that small number that next thing would be true.
Well, and I guess part of it is that it is a very light atomic weight, things like that. But also, the interesting part is carbon is what delineates inorganic or organic, right? So it's either carbon-based or not carbon-based. So it is incredibly important. I mean, it literally is one of the bases of chemistry and how we delineate molecules, and yet it's that little.
Well, when you go back to what it does for plants, and I don't even think I put in, I've talked about it a bunch of times. It is in there. But, it was funny because when I was reading about it, they were like, yeah, when you dry a plant down to like just dry as a bone,
right?
It's 45% carbon. You know what I mean? So like, so
you're telling me it's basically a diamond?
Yeah. Well,
that's
you keep going.
Yeah.
You keep going.
We're carbon-based life forms.
Well, because
we're diamonds too.
And not for nothing. If you go back and look, if you look at like coal. And what coal is,
graphite,
diamond.
Coal. Yeah.
Diamond is the next.
The
next phase of coal.
I know you can't make gold from copper, but I'm just thinking.
Fulvic, here. You figure fulvic's got some carbon in there.
Okay, so obviously carbon helps build biological compounds such as carbohydrates, protein, starches, cellulase, and lignin. So it's part of cell walls, things like that, of course. Where does it get it? CO2 from the air. Common. So with things like this, normally this is the area where we love to talk about products that would, if it's nitrogen, where do you get, what product in New Millennium or Scietetics is where is
product
nitrogen?
Do you have that has nitrogen?
Well, being that these, as we mentioned, O, H, and C are free elements that they gather from their surrounding environment. Therefore, there are no direct products that we have to provide these elements. But it's still something that we felt was worth an episode, and really that does wrap up our plant essential elements,
17,
which is
all of them.
17
Bam.
plus the free
Mic
ones.
drop.
Plus the free ones. Boom. Okay. Wow. It's been a bit of a journey. But we're not done on this episode yet. Don't worry. But the that part of it is not only done not only is the battle over the war has been conquered on nutrient elements. We're going to start doing some more things like we did the signs and symptoms, IPM, stuff like that. If you guys do have any other general topics that you're interested in, we're open.
Yeah, we got another questions episode we did. We want
the interaction. That's a big part of the show.
Well, we want people to be better, more interactive growers in their garden. The only way to do that is to get in, look at what your garden's doing, and then if you listen to some of the stuff that we say, and all of a sudden, you start seeing deficiencies, you start seeing these things, and you go, hey, man, Jug Dealers were talking about this. I get it. Like, that's the point. That's the point. I want people to get it and understand.
I'm trying to provide aha moments. Okay.
Yeah.
And like I've had them myself, not only just in my life, but in cannabis.
Even just doing this. I mean, the reason I came over to this side, and I don't want this to sound any type of way, but like, I did what I wanted to do in commercial cannabis. I grew thousands and thousands of pounds, and like that, I don't even know that was ever a goal of mine back.
But it's what happened.
But what I can say is, I didn't know a lot about the nutrients I was using. I just knew that if I followed the directions, I would have a good outcome.
Right.
And I knew how to I knew how to identify deficiencies and fix them and deal with them. But again, one of the biggest problems I had was I didn't understand where we were sourcing these things. And, like I've told people many times before, I used a different brand before I was forced to use New Millennium. But when I started using New Millennium and using it, I had 2 buildings and I was using it against the salt line. And like, the NewMill was just kicking the living crap out of the other building. And you start seeing, and you're in the same genetics, everything. I understand. We talk about phenotype and stuff like that. And this was 2 separate buildings. They were pretty close. But I'll tell you, that was really the aha moment for me with that.
Yeah.
And once I did that, and you're sitting here and you see all this colloidal clay in there and you're like, what is this stuff?
I look, the same thing. I had a similar experience when I started working for him. Honestly, I hadn't even used it. And I don't want to waste a whole lot of time in this. We're going to get into current events in cannabis real soon.
We had a Q&A episode, and one of the questions that I forgot to bring up that actually just queued in my mind is like, not to spring it on you guys, but I imagine you have the answer.
Spring it.
Could you explain? A lot of people are still confused. Like everyone understands phenotype, but genotype's getting brought into the
genotype
conversation.
is the genes. That's
so you want to explain like how Pheno and Geno works?
Let me start like this, and I'm not, and this is something honestly. These are going to be
go.
These are going to be topics that we're going to open up for a whole show. To be
100%.
But what I'll tell you in a nutshell. So we're diploids, right? That means you get 1 set of genes from your parents, 1 from mom, 1 from dad. We have 2 sets, right? That's DNA when it rips apart, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? Plants, have up to 8 different pairs of genes.
Polyploids.
They're polyploids. So there's so many genes in there that they have the ability to go in and turn on and off as they reset to seed every year. So one of the things about phenotype is that phenotype is the genetic influence in what's there, but then it's taking the environment into account as well. So genotype being literally just the genes. Whatever was turned on, turned off, whatever, that is taken at that, and that's whatever somebody selected it at. There could be, you could have the same plant through a different filial generation where you're going to have different genes that are turned on and turned off, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but it's literally just the genes plus the environment, pheno being the expression of those 2 combined together.
Nice.
Does that make sense? Okay.
I mean, that's a pull quote right there.
All right, so let's talk about current events in cannabis. I found a couple cool things that I thought was interesting. This I'm not surprised at all. It's just taken longer than I thought it was going to. But Nevada regulators have finally issued the first license to operate a lounge where cannabis can be consumed recreationally, marking the first of what is to be expected to be dozens of such operations. We always knew if there was one place that was going to do it, it's going to be Vegas.
It's going to be Vegas, yeah.
State of Cannabis Compliance Board announced
They're
Thursday.
trying here. They just keep shooting all that stuff down.
Well, yeah. I'm looking at it. It's going to be the first one. The lounge is dubbed Smoke and Mirrors. I like it. Owned by Thrive Cannabis Marketplace. Thrive being a longtime supporter of New Millennium Nutrients. Thank you very much, Thrive. That's a little bit of a commercial shout out. Appreciate you guys. You always take care of us when we're in Vegas. There are currently 19 lounges that have been approved by the Compliance Board for conditional license. So this is one of 19. So it's just really the first of many, but thought that was kind of interesting. First one we've seen.
Yep.
Next one, moving on. What was that one? Let's see here. Oh, yes. Okay. This one is about the Virgin Islands. And Virgin Islands is a beautiful, wonderful place. And you always think being able to consume cannabis on a beach, it's kind of like cannabis in the mountains.
Who doesn't want to do that?
That's like...
I love smoking weed on the beach.
That's hand in hand, right? Okay. So, U.S. Virgin Islands, you always kind of figured, because I've even, Puerto Rico has some laws, things like that. What did formerly stall out marijuana law in the U.S. Virgin Islands got a big push recently after advisory board approved a list of proposed rules and regulations that would govern the recreational use of cannabis in the territory. So, not necessarily anything rocket science there, but, I've traveled to St. John's and St. Thomas, and Man, it would be nice to have cannabis there.
I hear St. John's is mostly a national park, right?
Oh, like over 90%.
Yeah.
Really cool, super beautiful. It's about a 30-minute ferry ride over from St. Thomas. St. Thomas is, pretty crowded and kind of crazy. And then, but you get out from there. Yeah, well, I guess that's what we're saying. Come on, Virgin Islands. We want to go. Come on.
Who needs NewMill in the Virgin Islands?
Okay, the last one actually is what I found to be the most interesting one because I've been hearing this, Gabe, and I've even asked you a couple times. Yeah. We've got people that are over there. I've been hearing that there's going to be, a crackdown on Thailand, and it does appear that is in fact the case. 2 years after Thailand made cannabis legal, the country appears to be cracking down on the freewheeling drug market with a ban on recreational use. So there will still be a medical market.
I mean, it's going to be the way it was here for, the longest time, where you'll go find a doctor for $10 and you'll get off the plane. You'll go find a doctor for $10. You'll get your script, and you'll be able to go.
I think so, but they're definitely they're reining that in a little bit. So originally, I heard maybe that they were getting rid of it, which would be a real shame.
Yeah.
But it does not seem like
they're not
is.
Gonna. I mean,
they're basing it, or they're blaming it on crime and availability to kids. Whatever. I think that's a. That's an easy excuse, but anyhow,
it's right next to Laos. There's opium.
Good point. Good point. So that's that's current events cannabis. We'll see what's up next time. Moving on to our strain talk, and I wanted to bring one in. It's one that I've actually growing it my first time right now. Very impressed with it. It's from a supporter from the show. Shout out to Lovin' in Their Eyes. She has been doing some wonderful work both in the breeding department and also just personal growing department, hash making, extracts.
They have been murdering it for years.
Many years. And they started, and this is a shout out to both of them, and it is a couple, and I want to, without mentioning by name,
no names.
I want to specifically recognize both of you.
Dude, they're the real ones. I've known those guys for years.
You guys have been doing great work, and thank you for the support over the years.
Funkberry I had, that was from
great.
Them. And
that's great.
One of the best berries I've ever.
So
heard.
This is Guavagator. I actually got shout out to the DGC. Got this through the DGC. Grambo, do you know who actually selected this?
I believe this was the Juf cut. Juf and the Beanstalk.
Juve. So This was selected not by myself, but it's Guavagator, which also brings in one of my other favorite breeders, which is Grandiflora Genetics.
Mm-hmm.
So his guava, which his name's Mark. Names are fine with him because that's how he is on Instagram anyways, Mark Grandiflora. Still crushing it out there. It's his Grandy Guava by Alligator Wine, which is one of the ones she's been using quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think she put that in her Cajun Mints as well. Definitely some interesting stuff. It says right in here, the frame on Guavagator is impressive. I'm here to tell you it is. Could you put it down a little bit there? Yeah. And I think, and we'll have, as always, we'll have the image put up on Instagram. So check it out on Jug Dealers Instagram. Very thick stems. Very funky tropical fruit smell. I can totally.
Their stuff is always interesting.
Yes,
it's
it is.
Always
heavy chem and fuel terps on some of the plants that lean more towards the alligator wine.
Frosty.
Super frosty.
Oh
Dude,
my
super
God.
frosty, great color.
Yeah.
Honestly, I took the picture, I want to say right off of her website just because it was such a good picture.
Yeah, if y'all want that like weird off the wall, not what other people are doing or even in the realm.
It's so fascinating you guys say that because as soon as we chopped down this last run of the Guavagator, I literally was racking my brain. I can't even put the wine is almost the closest thing. It's got this tangy. It's not fruity. It's not gassy.
Alligator.
Well, and hopefully, these are the flavors. These are the flavors for me that are going to kind of bring live resin back because a lot of that stuff that's real greasy like that, it just doesn't wash. But those flavors are so unique and wild that for live resin,
love to try some Kind Bill.
Make that happen, Guavagator Kind Bill.
Yeah, no, guess what, guys? We're gonna make that happen. Honestly, very impressed. Loving in her eyes. Thank you very much. And then the
shout
selection
out,
from Jupe. Thank you very much as well. Shout out to DGC. Guavagator. Go and get it. I know you can get feminized seeds. It's a 9 to 12 week flowering time. I'm gonna take it right to about 9. That is your strain for the week. Okay, and actually, we're going to go right into suggested reading at this point, which it's actually kind of funny because we were going over and Gabe and I both kind of said, everything's been plants. at this point. And we wanted to kind of just go, well, let's go. There's a lot of different stuff. Self-help, leadership, things like that. So I had a book that had been sitting on the stack that I'd been meaning to read for a bit. And I said, he goes, well, I don't know, man. I've been thinking about maybe something not plants. I was like, funny you say that. I was thinking the same thing. And I was like, what you got? And he goes, Good to Great. And I said, I'm literally looking at the book right now.
Somewhat serendipitous.
So, and here's the thing: we'll put up the description on. I don't want to read all the way through it. It is a little bit thick.
I mean,
and we're getting towards the end. But like you said, it
makes you a better person. It's not just about. It's a leadership book, but the thing about it is, it really helps you think about ways to be a better person. I think. If you're into TED Talks, if you're into trying to be the most efficient human you can be,
right?
It really kind of focuses on that. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the book was the fact that they had a bunch of really large companies that they made kind of focus groups, and they went through a bunch of different scenarios.
The data they went through is quite impressive. I'm not going to bore you guys with the numbers. Wild, you can pull it up and read it yourself.
But the biggest thing is identifying where people work the best. And I think, for anybody
like
out there
at the beginning, aces in the places.
And I think for anybody who works, in commercial gardens, if you're listening to this show, I've managed some pretty big facilities, over 50,000 square feet. And it's amazing how you can have a guy who shouldn't be in the garden, but should be in the clone room. And you put him in the clone room, and this guy that everybody says on the team kind of sucked. You put him in the clone room, and this dude's flourishing because he's got something, and he's responsible for more plants than anybody else. If somebody
doesn't work out, ultimately at some point it is the manager's
But you got to coach up. You got to coach up, and it's your job as a leader to really identify the winners on your team. Like I was saying to you earlier, don't try and make a running back a wide receiver. Identify that he's a wide receiver. And kind of, make them play that position. So it's a really good book. Just there's a lot of really good points in there. Jim Collins, actually is from Boulder, so that was kind of cool too.
Sure,
really,
connection.
Really. It's a solid book. So if you guys get a chance to read it, and it's fast reading.
You know what? Right now, actually, and I don't know how this is long as going.
On sale on Amazon.
No. Interestingly enough, I pulled it up on Amazon. It's free on Audible with an Audible trial right now.
Nice.
So you can actually get it, and so many things are on tape now.
It'll make you a better person.
We're gonna go right to the last part, which is section 3, which is listener interaction. Again, just a general shout out. If you guys have any questions, please engage with us. I can't guarantee that we're going to answer everything, but the more the more questions we're asked, the better fabric of a show we can really put together. If you guys have different, different subjects or topics, you're like, man, I'd really love to get some more info on this. I can't guarantee it, but don't be afraid to reach out.
Well, and not for nothing, we have really good resources. Yeah. So even if it's something that you could go look up and find an answer to, we may have a different wild answer.
You don't know. So reach out. Okay, let's go supporter shout outs. This one's actually yours. Go ahead.
This one, big time shout out to the homies at First Light Cultivation, Andy, Luke, that whole squad out there. They're running New Millennium with all the accoutrements. And I did the Shore Grow Vendor Day, which was really fun. Shout out to everybody who came out to see me. That was like a really cool event. They came out to see myself and Jair, and a decent amount of people showed up. But these guys came correct with the GMO, with the runts, with the lemon, with the push pop.
Nice.
And that runts they have, I think if any of y'all have listened to me any amount of time, you know that most of me is kind of a runts hater. And this stuff is some runts you can get down with.
Gross.
So it was really cool to smoke that stuff. I was cruising around the East Coast. We went to the Astor Club. I smoked the GMO with the Piff guys and Danny Danko, and those dudes were all like, "Damn, this stuff's fire!" So you can get them to say it's fire. It's
probably fire.
So that was cool. It's always good to have people representing NewMill on the road and hooking you up.
And another supporter shout out, Abstract Genetics Official. It's actually where we got the magic mushroom from. That's a very, very tightly held strain out of Florida. Gabe's been playing with it a little bit. He put it up on his G Money Love
it's for real,
IG.
Real.
So take a look at it.
For real.
If you guys want, in fact, that's probably the best place to go get a really good pick of it right now. G Money Love, go check them out.
It's still got 4.5 weeks, something like that.
Last but not least, my boy Chop, Florida, Tampa, the man, the myth. Chop, you're my man. You're my boy. You're my boy, Blue. Chop's Flower Shop. Check him out. He won the Florida Cup 2 years ago with our genetics. He's got actually the Carlet Cocktail on New Millennium going in this year. Good luck, my boy. I think you got it this year. Let's do this.
Quick shop shout-outs.
Shop shout-outs. Grower's Choice out there in California. 3 locations. Hayward, Modesto, Tracy. They've got a number of our products on the shelf. Go see them out there. They're great people. Been doing it for a lot of years. Thank you guys for your support.
The homies that cultivate, they're always throwing down.
Yeah.
Big shout out to those guys. We love those guys. Chip, Daryl, Jacob, the whole squad. They're actually doing the board meetings every other Wednesday through the end of March. So they're meeting at different ski areas, and we're all going to go ride. I'm meeting those guys at Breck this week. I think 2 weeks later, it's a Vail. I believe
so.
I think I'll be at every one for the rest of the. I'm
gonna work on making one. I'm gonna work on making one. I think they're at the end of March.
And then hydroculture, they're having a grand reopening, which is kind of cool because they actually moved to a bigger shop. So that's awesome.
Yep.
Because,
congrats, guys. Good work. Thank you for the support.
Both of the homies in Virginia, as far as Growers Paradise and hydroculture, they've both moved to bigger shops in the last 2 years. So I'm really proud of those guys. Big time supporters. We got a lot of people in Virginia that are using the Scietetics. They're using the NewMill. And then finally, big shout out to Shore Grow. I really appreciate them having us through for the vendor day. A lot of interested people, a lot of people growing with NewMill. It was really cool to get that support from the homies. So huge shout out to those.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you guys for listening. Remember, again, we're going to start doing everything through JugDealers.net as far as giveaways go. Giveaway on merch. We'll have merch for sale, all that fun stuff. Till next time from the Jug Den at 5-8 Distribution. Thank you guys for listening. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun. Fun getting all the whole nutrients and elements
I'm glad
series
we got
up.
through.
More fun stuff to come, guys. Thank you so much.
Peace.